Hi there, everybody. Matt Lawton here. This is the Astrological Winds channel. I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of September 22nd through 28th. Main thing happening this week, as some of you may know, is Mars is going into Scorpio, and that will be the start of the show. Although the Sun is also going into Libra, and because once again, just like last week, when Mercury and Venus change signs, they'll hit all the outer planets. So Mars is going to quincunx the Saturn Neptune conjunction, quincunx Uranus, and square Pluto. And the Sun going into Libra will be opposite the Saturn Neptune conjunction, and then in a grand trine in air with Uranus and Pluto. And this is all the activity of the week, and it's really front loaded. We're actually right in the middle of it today on Monday, some of it actually even starting yesterday and the day before, and it'll go through Wednesday, Thursday. So the first 3 or 4 days this week, really intense energy that we're going to show. And basically, um, these two will travel together and influence each other with all these outer planet aspects. So that's what I'm going to look at mainly this week. What I want to just go over real quick, bear with me. The Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog. It is on YouTube every week. If you have a YouTube account, you like what you see, I'd really like you to become a follower. Um, and I ask everybody who watches the blog to please pass the link along to someone else, even if you've done it before. That's the way I get the blog to grow in a very authentic and organic way and find the right people actually that really want to hear the information and use it. Remember also, the blog was a podcast long before it was a YouTube channel, which has been a YouTube channel now, I think, like 6 or 7 years, which is quite a ways, but it was a podcast for years before that. So it's still available on podcasts, which frees you up not to have to watch the video. And it's the same exact audio content as the video has. So, like, you can frees you up to maybe listen to it when you're doing something else, like driving or something, because I know all of our time is so valuable. It gives you another option of being able to hear it. Also has its own Instagram account, Astrological Winds channel, where I do put the link to the blog in the newsreel every week. So if you want to become a follower there. And then it's always available on my website, www.astrologicalwinds.com. There's a blogs tab. Not only will this week's be there, but several months before. So if you want to go back and check other ones, they're still available. That also lists all my professional services. There's a menu there, pricing and descriptions of services. So if you're ready to get your chart read or you need some other kind of astrology work, please check out my website, and I'd love to do that for you. Or if you know anyone that's looking for that kind of service, I've been doing it for 20 years. Have so many happy customers. I'd like you to be one of them too. All right, I'll get into more of that stuff in detail. Remember, if you don't know astrology well, don't get stuck on the astrology terms. You want to hear what the interpretations are so that you can be self-empowered with this energy, with the weather, the astrological weather this week. What are those astrological winds blowing in this week? And a lot of us who know astrology know that Mars, energy can be very, very tricky. So so traditionally Mars is known as what they call the lesser malefic. And the ancient astrologers, in all honesty, I've studied ancient astrology a lot. They don't really have much nice to say about Mars. They really don't consider Mars is a troublemaker. Usually the energy of Mars does not bring in good energy, and it's very selfish, egotistical, aggressive, impulsive. Doesn't really think about how its actions are going to affect others, or or situations. So that's what made them really feel like Mars is just a really difficult energy to deal with. He was the god of war. That was the main thing he was got of. And unfortunately, that's something that humans, seem to always be involved in. So yes, there's an energy that's very much surrounding that archetype of confrontation and violence and war. And when he was at his best, they would say that when Mars was peaceful, yang energy, male energy is peaceful. The best use of that energy was doing agriculture, actually. You know, and so he's also the god of agriculture in his peaceful form. But that is not Mars' normal energy. Mars' normal energy is usually something that's very aggressive, that can become very combative very easily. So that's why Mars was considered the lesser malefic and was usually considered a troublemaker. So all that being said, Mars goes into Scorpio, which is one of the two signs that it rules. I still use the ancient rulerships. I know a lot of Pluto definitely has affinity with Scorpio, but it has had nothing to do with personal energy. So it really is Mars that rules Scorpio. And when you think about what rulership actually means in astrology, it means that it is giving the planet that more. It's like energy from a sign that the planet and the sign are very similar. So it helps that planet, or it increases that planet's normal energy, right? So when Mars is in Scorpio, that means that there is an incredible amount of motivation behind our actions that are based on emotions, fixed emotions, emotions that we're really, can be really, really stuck with. And so, it really increases the energy of Mars. So, you can say to yourself, well, is that really a good thing? Because, once again, Mars is representing this very impulsive, aggressive kind of energy, and is that really something that you wanna really see? But if nothing else, when Mars is in Scorpio, we are super motivated by what we believe in. It can be very fixed. It can be very emotionally driven. It can be very blind spot. But these intense emotions really will bring out some very intense energy, and that's through action with Mars. It's the planet that has us act, and so we can get very willful in what we're doing when Mars is in Scorpio. We're very, very, we can definitely go from assertive right into aggressive very easily, be very pushy, be very persistent, be very defensive, about our energy. And keep our emotions literally to ourselves, but you can feel the intensity that people have when that so even though it can be that, even though we can kind of keep quiet, there's there can be a lot of anger that is building up very slowly. And sometimes you'll see this come out when people make sarcastic remarks. That should be a red flag. That's anger building up in someone. And if you catch yourself even doing that, then you can be like, oh, okay, there's something that I'm really, feeling in here, and a lot of times that Scorpio energy is energy that's in the psyche, in the subconscious, and it's very hard to see it ourselves, but this can get us really into power struggles, control games with others, trying to manipulate others' emotions, things like that we really, really want to fight for what we believe in. But by doing that, we really, can get ourselves in a lot of power struggles. We have a lot of conviction behind our beliefs, and so a lot of times on a personal level that will come out, that energy, especially because it's Scorpio, with people that we're deeply emotionally connected to, our family and some of our best friends, and that's where it can get really intense and you can get into some really power struggles. But the thing to remember about this energy too, it's like it's going to be feeding the world too, and it has a proclivity to react to things, and it can get like very, very intense. The way things are going right now, people are reacting very dramatically to things. They're overreacting to things. They're trying to control things. They're trying to have power over things. There's a lot of emotions behind our words and what we're saying, what we're doing, and, so we have to be really, really careful with this energy, in our own lives. Really can damage like relationships like really hard if we allow this energy to like dictate all this anger that comes up, and all of a sudden we're pushing on each other in very intense ways. So yeah, Scorpio is the sign that Mars rules, but what it's doing is it's intensifying Mars's motivation, intensifying its reactions, and that may not necessarily be a good thing in the way that the world is, and and in our own lives, anybody that we're having trouble with or instances. Now the quincunx to Saturn and Neptune. Now remember, Saturn did slip back into Pisces, but they're still very close to one another, 2 degrees to one another. Neptune is still on the Aries side, so the quincunx to Saturn actually happened on Saturday, and then the quincunx to Neptune is exact on Tuesday, but they're conjunct. So this whole period, really, we're going to be feeling this quincunx. And this is a lot of awkward energy again. This is quincunx is like a very awkward energy. Everything seems to be bumpy. Everything seems to be off. Seems like our actions just are not a lot of times harmonious. And a lot of times with this, once again, with Saturn Neptune, it's showing that, a lot of that is because of frustration of trying to get our ideals into reality, and reality is just not cooperating with that. So we can really feel like our ideals are being blocked and restricted from multiple sources. It could be people, it could just be the situations we're in the world, it could be our personal situations that are going on. It can be just a real struggle inside ourselves to decide what to do when we feel like this, because the energy just feels so off. It can really be confusion, and part of us is like very subjective with Mars energy too, so it can really get us like caught up in a storminess inside where we're just like, oh, what am I supposed to do at this point with this energy? I'm really confused, and part of us just wants to go off and do our own thing and be like, just like not care what the results are. And part of us is just like, no, I need to take some kind of responsibility for what's going on, but it's really difficult to know what that is right now. So it's really easy to feel irritated, to feel annoyed, to not completely understand why we're feeling that. We can have a lot of discouraging situations occurring, or people that discourage you, that make your efforts kind of seem futile at this time. In fact, I would highly recommend that you avoid negative people right now, because it's hard enough to deal with this energy yourself, and they can just feed that energy. They can really just make it like even worse. It would, best to try to, really do something constructive with this energy if you can instead. And that may have to be something slow, something by itself, that you just, you know, need to just calmly get into. Just really like, just realize that, we could really be building up a lot of irritation inside. And at times, if we're not careful, especially with Saturn and with Neptune, like the boundaries of our body's physical health can really be affected by this. It can really physiologically affect us. And all of a sudden we can be getting illnesses, or just getting like really really edgy, getting like a nervous exhaustion, wanting to like, just really having a hard time finding our balance, really having a hard time trying to like, get something done where we're not falling into some kind of like negative or pessimistic way of looking at things. So it can be very, very hard not to sink into this attitude of feeling like you're defeated. Now, like one of the things you can do with this energy to help protect yourself physically is like slow movement exercise, yoga, things like that. And also making sure you get enough sleep, also making sure that you are nourishing yourself properly and trying to avoid people and environments that can be really intense, and then by Wednesday we get another quincunx with Uranus, and then the square to Pluto locks in pretty much both on those days too. And this, and once again, this is where the energy, if it's building up as anger prior to this under the Saturn Neptune, this is where it can really explode. This is when we can get really impulsive with our actions, and we have to be really, really careful. Anything that we feel is restricting us, any person, any situation, we can get really rebellious with. And yet somehow we need to output somehow some of this energy. But if we're not careful, we can get really impulsive. We can cause our own disruptions. We can create actions that we regret very, very quickly and hurt ourselves. So, before you make any kind of decision on what you're doing under this energy, you really need to make sure, check in with yourself. How angry are you feeling? Can you pull a little bit back? Can you like calm a little bit down? Because, these impulsive moves, if we make them, they're going to upset the people around us, the world, and what's going on around us. So you need to try to get yourself to slow down. But the Mars square the Pluto, like I said, Pluto has a lot to do with Scorpio too. This can really make this extra difficult, right? I mean, like these two are the higher and lower octave of what motivates us to act. Like Mars can come from a very, very like just physical body survival, right in the moment act, whereas Pluto is coming from the deep psyche, things that we don't see and don't understand. So like our actions can be being driven by subconscious energies that we're not really clear of, and that can get us really quickly into like these stubborn fixed postures. Scorpio and Aquarius are both fixed signs. So Pluto's in Aquarius. They get really stuck on their beliefs. Get very, very stubborn. And when we take up that attitude, what does it do? It creates combativeness. It creates conflict with others. It can easily dissolve into power struggles, manipulation, control, violence. Even once again, violent people, violent places, got to be very careful of. We really feel like we're right when Scorpio and Aquarius are going on, and we don't like to really take in a lot, and we can get really confrontational with this energy, and we do have to let out this energy somehow, really what it's trying to do is transform the world. Really what Mars, Pluto, and all this energy is trying to do is transform the world. But transformation requires change, and change requires like purging lots of old stuff that's just been stuck for a long time, maybe hidden in our subconscious, and driving us blindly, and that those actions, being self-destructive ultimately to our own aims, and being destructive to the people around us. This is energy in the world. We're going to have to be really, the world, which is so full of violence and conflict right now, is really going to get ratcheted up by this energy, and it's going to most likely, we're going to see some really serious conflicts blow up. This is also conflict between individuals and groups, so you can have individuals acting out on this kind of energy too, where they do something really rebellious rebellious, really violent in trying to stand up for some kind of belief that they have. But this is power tripping energy. It's confrontational energy, and it's easy to become either the perpetrator or the victim or both in this. And then really what we want to do is to try to use this energy with all the quincunxes. It shows releasing, letting go of so many of the things that we're used to, maybe letting go of beliefs that are blocking us, letting go of old structures and forms that are blocking us, letting go of like things that we think are the right way to go that are blocking us. And we, in order, if we can do the quincunxes about making those adjustments, making those releases, making those letting goes, and once we can do that, then we maybe could work with this square with the Pluto to start to purge out all that stuff that's blocking us and like try to get a clearer picture of what is behind all this stuff in us and where we're blind to that. And then if we can start to clear that energy out, that's when we can allow a lot of this creative energy of Uranus and Pluto to come in and allow change in. The problem is a lot of people get really triggered by change. So they try to hold on, they try to control things. We see this going on in our world right now so much, where people are so stuck on their ideals that the division that's created is incredible, even within countries that have the same citizens and are supposed to be on the same side. So we can get very, very obsessive with this energy. We have blind spots, and we're always, and we like feeling really like we need to control others, control the environment. All this will do is get us into power struggles. So, on the world stage, I would not be surprised if the violent energy just upticks and that we see individuals act out. But for us personally, we need to just be really careful of how we are reacting to energy this week, because it's being driven by fixed emotions, by fixed ideas. There's a lot of blind spots in it. And all we may end up doing is bringing out our own self destruction if we're not aware of that. Now, the same time that all this energy going on with Mars, Monday through really Saturday through Thursday with Mars, Sunday through Wednesday, the Sun goes into Libra and will oppose Saturn, Neptune, and also go into a grand trine, which is a really positive aspect with Uranus and Pluto. So when the sun goes into Libra, we're what? We're at the equinox, right? This is when the sun goes over into the relationship side of the chart for the first time. The first six signs are personal signs. The last six signs are more relationship oriented signs, right? So so that means here in the northern hemisphere we're going into the autumn. In the southern hemisphere we're going into the fall. But because the sun is all more about the individual, when the sun is in Libra, traditionally this is considered weak, because once again Libra is about the other, and the sun is supposed to be about yourself. So it's like literally considered what in fall when the sun is in Libra. But when the sun is in Libra, yeah, that's when we start reaching out to other people. That's when we can be on really good manners. We can spread affection. We can spread love. We want to have a connection with other people, and so we're willing to be charming. We're willing to bring that in. We also, this is a time where we really enjoy the finer things in life. The things that whatever we consider beautiful, like in our objects. And that's different. Everybody's taste is different, but whatever we consider the finer things and whatever we like, this is a time where we really will enjoy them. And it's a great time too. We have a lot of creative energy, so like it's a great time to like make your environment more artistic, more creative, more colorful, more the shape and form and color. We have really good sense of artistic balance with Libra, so it's a great time to do that kind of thing, or to work on any kind of artistic thing actually, because there's a lot of talent that is there, and we can create some really pleasant surroundings, or we can just enjoy pleasant surroundings. Libra is one of those signs that enjoys nature and the outdoors and relationships with others. Now, the thing about Libra is we can get really indecisive. Libra's problem is that it's always trying to please everyone. And when we're trying to please everyone, that can kind of be, that's difficult. It's basically impossible, right? So, like, when we do that, we end up pleasing no one, and it makes us look like we're really indecisive. So, we got to be really careful with Libra and understand that, if we're trying to please everyone, we're going to end up, looking like we're really indecisive and getting even more people upset with us because it doesn't look like we have much of a backbone, really. Like, where we're willing to finally say, hey, this is it. So then the opposition to Saturn and Neptune, the opposition to Saturn was actually on Sunday, and the opposition to Neptune is exact on Tuesday. But once again, what's it telling us? Our ideals don't seem to be working out well in reality. And this will, because it's an opposition and because it's Libra, it's going to be mainly be showing this in relation to other people in our close relationships. And we may feel like we need to make some serious decisions in relation to some of this stuff. But we can become very aware of the people who are blocking us in some way, how either their ideals or the way they are with us are blocking us from being able to what we want to really do in the world. So that can be really tough. It can be like, can almost feel like, when it's coming out in our close relationships and partnerships, and that we're aware that's what's creating a lot of the circumstances that are blocking us. It can be really difficult, and we can feel like, wow, I may have to make some decision to really like get away from these circumstances. And so, like, people have a tendency to shut down their communications under these oppositions. They feel like there's a big gap between them and others, that they may never be able to like close that gap. That people are never going to be ideally who we want them to be, or even close to that. And you know what, that's actually the truth. But really what it can do is shut down communications for a couple of days. It can be very hard to find the balance right now between, with in relationships. You can feel really inhibited by certain ones or really unfulfilled by certain ones, and at the same time it's really difficult right now to hammer out compromises, which is what Libra would really like to do. But and that's what you really need to do, because otherwise you really do end up isolating yourself and you can alienate others. But this can also like sap our psychological and physical health, and that can really be draining and add to the confusion that we're feeling. Things just don't feel really solid right now. And so this kind of energy can really make us once again want to just give up, play the victim, like, I'm just like really confused, I'm a martyr. Now it is good though for taking some time back, stepping back, and not only hashing over this stuff yourself, but if you have someone who you're really close to, that you trust, that you can tell all this stuff to, you can have a good connection with that person like that, and be able to like kind of work through some of this frustration by just talking it out with someone that you have that kind of connection with, that deep, intimate, emotional connection with, would really be really helpful in this situation. So then, but yeah, and then as the week goes on, we're going to start to lock into a grand trine in air with Uranus and Pluto. So the grand trine is the best aspect that there is. It's an aspect among three planets at least that's a triangle, basically. There it is. There's our grand trine right there. The sun to Uranus to Pluto, and there's the opposition of the sun there. We got our Mars thing going on here too, the square to Pluto, and the two quincunxes, which is actually a yod and very fateful again, as I tell you guys. But here's the one good thing this week. This shows that if we can do all this purging, come to the, the truth of our situations and our relationships, then some really good ideas can start to come out of that energy. And so we can come up with ideas that start to resolve some of these problems that we're having. We can make some new discoveries. We can get some new information that can be very valuable. It can be very exciting for our current situation and help us see new ways out, can help us resolve some of the problems that we're having right now. So I really, really like that. It can change the way we even see or understand life. It can help us. So it's really a time where you want to encourage the change, even if it feels like a little bit scary and stuff. You want to try to encourage that and bring it in. Like I said, if you can do the purging up here with the Pluto, then this part of the Pluto with the trine with Uranus can bring in lots of transformation. Now, it also shows we can use science, we can use technology, we can use the occult like astrology, we can use human mind studies, all of those things to help us get a deeper understanding of what's going on within us and in the world around us. And that is what helps spawn new approaches to things, to go to new places altogether. Definitely a time when you can really use this energy to have some powerful experiences with yourself and other people that help you understand life better, and really shows you what motivates you too. Like, really excellent for tapping into what motivates you. And when we know what truly motivates us, then we're willing to make the reformations that we need to make to bring in changes that, so that, but it definitely, this is great energy for learning too. It's like any kind of like new ideas that come in, we can really focus in on, we can really concentrate, get into them in depth, get into them in research, find, make really and be able to use them, right, and make powerful impressions on other people too. And so, it's just, you know, and the thing is with Pluto too, remember always with Pluto and even Neptune and Uranus, they're transpersonal planets. So you want like these changes and these transformations to not only be benefiting you, you want them to be benefiting everybody if you want them to work best. If you do that, you can really have an influence. You can really have a ripple that can start out in your little world and just keep getting out further and further. So that, so you can get a lot done with this energy. And it's really excellent to apply it now, to get it into what you're doing right now. You can gain a lot of experience with this energy, a lot of knowledge, a lot of self understanding, new insights. And what do new insights do? They give us new approaches to things that can help break up some of this other energy. And not only that, when you set up stuff under grand trines, they continue to act into the future. This is it's air energy. It's like use your mind, and Uranus energy. It's got like tapped into the higher mind right now. So it can have great insights, great perceptions. And then the Pluto brings it into depth too. And that is what ultimately can make a big, big shift, a big transformation when we see how deep certain things can go. That is when we can make something that is affecting the future for us and then starts to ripple out and affect the people that are in our lives, and then maybe even out beyond that into society itself. And right now, society needs new approaches, new insights, new ways of doing things because we're really stuck and our ideals are not working well in reality. And there is a lot of frustration and irritation and anger and violence in reaction to that. And all that stuff is really just blindly reacting to, like, things that we're not seeing in our psyche, or just out of pure emotional reaction, and that's just making things fall more and more into a cycle of destruction. So we really have an opportunity with this grand trine to get new perceptions that we can bring back to this stuff and help us release a lot of this old energy that we have, let go, bring in some new changes, and ultimately that can bring transformation to our future. So yeah, that's what I got this week, you guys. There's really not much happening after Wednesday, Thursday, when these final aspects hit. The rest of the week is kind of mellow. Now next week we're going to be changing months, so I will do the monthly for October next week. And it actually looks like a relatively mild week anyway, as far as weekly stuff goes. So it'll be an excellent week to do both the weekly and the monthly. I see a little bit of Mercury activity, but remember, right now, all the planets, right, are at the very end or at the very beginning of signs. So when those transiting inner planets and the sun and moon get in the middle of signs right now, there's long periods of time where they're not making aspects. And in the dailies, that can be the moon. We've been going through some days where there's no moon aspects because there's no planets in the middle degrees. And there'll be some weeks right now, like next week, when the planets get in the middle degrees where there won't be a lot of aspects again. But yeah, like I said, I'll go through October too. All right, well, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. This is a free video blog. I really need you to pass the link on right now, please. Even if you've done it before, if you'd like to give a currency donation, no amount is too small. I really thank the people who do. It seems to me that the same people once a month or once every couple months give me a little donation. I really appreciate that. I know you guys always tell me it's because it's helping you out in your personal lives, and that's really what I'm hoping to do. But if you'd like to give, $5, even my Venmo is at Matthew, two T's, hyphen in the middle, Lawton, Lauten, or Cash App is $ Matthew Lawton. Um, the blog is also always can be found not only on YouTube and podcasts, but on my website. Now, my website also has all my professional services. I've been a professional astrologer for over 20 years, been giving readings for over 20 years. It took 7 years of training to get to that point. And I'd really like to do your chart or your predictive work for the year or your relationship work or your child's chart, or if you have a horror your election question, look at the website. The menu is there, the prices are right there. If you need to work with me on the pricing and need to do payments, we can do that. If you can put half up and get the rest to me within a month or two, we can do that. And I'd love to do the reading. It doesn't have, we can do it on the phone. It can be done as a recording. Also, if you're possibly looking to know more about astrology, I have some podcast beginner classes available and for a fee. And I also am looking for beginner students to possibly do a live class regularly, maybe 2, 3, 4 times a month. And also, if you have a group and you'd like to have a lecture or a workshop, mini readings, things like that, I'm available for too. So if you check the website out, www.astrologicalwinds.com, all that information is there. It's what I do. I do it well. I'd love to do it for you, like I've done for so many other people in the last 20 years. Um, and yeah, and like I said, otherwise, remember it's also available on podcasts. And please, please, please send the link along. All right, I'll see you guys all next week, and we'll take a look and see what's going to be going on in October next week. Also, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel.